my to-do list. First, I want to get the sprite up on the canvas. So I'll just draw the sprite, animate sprite, multiple directions. And then I want to get the movement working, which is to say I'm going to move sprite up, down, and I'm going to move world left, right. So my idea is the little guy is going to stay in the middle, and he's going to walk because the world's going to move when he moves. All right, I'm going to just show you my graphics. Oops, this is my little sprite. It's got 5 different motions. All right, and I'm going to use a bunch of my examples to make things a little faster. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and use my animation library that I gave you guys for this project. It's a very simple animation setup that is just going to let me just run add animation and give it some object which has a update step and a draw step. So if I had a player here, my player is going to need an update and a draw. And then I'm going to import add animation from animation, and I'm going to add the animation player. So to give you a quick example, if I were to do for draw, if I grab a canvas and I add a CTX fill rect, now if I just import my player, that should, hey. Oh, and I have to start the animation, so import start animation from animation. And oops, let me spell that correctly. Start animation, boom. There we go. Now I have my basic setup working. So for my sprite, I'm going to use this rolling sprite example. Is pretty close to the code that I want. I'm going to go ahead, oops, the canvas import has to be updated, and if my player imports sprite from sprite, if instead of filling the rectangle, I were to call sprite draw, 50-50, 0. Oops, my rolling sprite doesn't export a sprite. Let me rename that symbol. Okay, so if I were to draw the sprite, I would just see my rolling sprite. So that's like obviously not what I want, but that's pretty close. Rolling sprite draw takes X, Y, frame, and direction. So if I had the player object have a frame and a direction, I could then call those here. And if I wanted to add an updater for the frame, I could do that. So I could just take like a set interval, which lets me do something on a timer. Player.frame plus equals 1. and every 1/4 of a second, I update it. So that's now like working, but it's not my player, but I have the example already working with just the example copy pasted in. So now I have to get a little bit fancier to understand how my sprite works. So if I look at my sprite, it's got 4 frames per direction, and I started with a still, left, right, up, and down. So mine has more directions. And the easy way to think about that is going to be just with numbers. So what I'm going to do is export directions, and we'll just do the numbers. So still, left, right, up, and down. Those would be the numbers. And then when I come into this frame, this draw, the direction is going to be, oops, just a number. And let's find, here we go. So the frame, basically what I'm doing is I'm adding 4 to the frame of its left in the original, because it only had a left and a right. Now what I want to do is add 4 times direction. And the reason for that is, let's say that the direction is right, it's 2, and I want to draw frame 3. Well, when I come down to this draw command, you'll say, okay, the frame is going to be 3, and then we're going to add 4 times 2, so we're going to add 8 to 3. So we're going to get frame 11. And if we go back to my player graphic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's the 3rd frame of the right direction is frame 11. So that's all going to work. You'll notice I haven't seen any update there yet. I forgot to change the graphic, so it's the wrong graphic. We got to come back up here. There's the rolling dude. That becomes my 4-directional player. My player happens to be 32 pixels by 32 pixels, the same size as this. So the player is working. Beautiful. All right, so I have it animating. That's pretty good. And let's just prove that I can. I'm going to go ahead and import directions as well, so that I can use those. So if I said, for example, directions up, now my sprite looks up. If I say down, my sprite looks down. And so on and so forth. All right, so now I have some options for how my sprite moves. I'm going to just use the arrow keys to move it left and right, and I'm going to use the spacebar key to like make my sprite jump. So that's kind of a fun way for movement to work. So the way I'm going to model that is it's going to have, a Vx, which is its velocity in the x direction. We'll start with a 0. And we'll have a Vy, which is its velocity in the y direction. And we'll start with a 0. And now I'm going to add to my update some statements that say if Vx is greater than 0, or maybe I want to make it some, maybe greater than 1. This direction equals directions right. If Vx is less than 1, this direction equals directions left. Oops, I forgot the thises. You'll notice the red underline helps me catch my typos. So that's nice. This update function is working because I have animation, and animation automatically calls my update and my draw functions. All right, so now we're going to need to add some key commands to my player. And what we might want to have is just some methods on the player that we can then map. So for example, I could do go right, which will just make this Vx plus equal 5. Go left, this Vx minus equals 5. Jump, this Vy minus equals 10, let's say. Oh, you know what, I realized that my y's, I forgot. Oh, I haven't done the y's yet, so we'll work with those in a minute. All right, so now we got to add the key commands. Window, add event listener. Key down. Event if e key equals arrow left, player go left, if e key equals arrow right, player go right. I'll show you a better way to do that in a minute, but that's a good start. Cool. So now my right works and my left works. Cool. All right, it's a little hard to see what's happening with my sprite, so I'm going to just show you an example of a debug. I could also do a CTX fill text, and I will say Vx, this Vx, Vy, this Vy, and we'll just put those at 50-50. Oops, that's going to be on top of my sprite, so let me move my sprite. Okay, and I can see my issue already. I should be still at first, so that should be, there we go. And maybe what I want to do is make it automatically still. So now it's still, left, right. Cool. So that works pretty well. Just need to get my jumping working. So I'm going to go ahead and add a jump equals space. Player jump. Oops. Make that work. Actually, I'm just going to use the arrow up because the spacebar is getting intercepted. Cool. You'll notice the Vy is changing. What I'm going to want to do is then make my player actually move. So I'm going to need to give it a Y coordinate. We will start it at y of 400. We'll need to draw it at this dot y. In update gets a nice little timestamp. We're going to make this dot y plus equal this dot vy times timestamp over 1,000. So that's going to make it move whatever the y is per 1,000 pixels. There you can see the jumping is working. And it's just floating up, 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 up. Oh, apparently I floated the number up too. That's funny. Now my jump is kind of failing because it doesn't ever come back down. So I want to also make the this dot vy minus equal something. Minus equal 5, let's say. So now, oops, plus equal 5, my mistake. Now it falls by default. And so I need there to be a floor. So I'll say if this dot y is less than 400, then we apply gravity. Gravity, all right, so now this dot vy, oops, right. Kind of works. Oh. I need to make this dot vy stop. Hold on, there we go. All right, my gravity is too strong. I'll go ahead and subtract. There we go. I got a little jump. So that's working pretty well. I can obviously just change how strong the jump is by changing that number. There we go. Cool. Last step would be to change the animations if my guy is moving up or down. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, hey, if this vy is less than -5, let's say, this dot direction equals directions dot up. Uh-oh. And if this vy is greater than 5, and these are arbitrary numbers a little bit, you can play with them depending on what your goal is for the game. The direction is directions dot down. And now my directions determine what sprite is drawn. So there he goes up, and he comes down, and right, and left. And if it's walking left and it jumps, it goes to the up mode, and then it comes to the down mode, and then it walks again. So that's kind of cool motion. You'll notice at the top it goes back to walking for a second before falling. That's kind of fun. And it's got right hand motion and left hand motion and jumping. Cool. All set. So that's my basic game. The next step will be to get the background moving so that it looks like it's walking. I'll save that for another video.